When I walked into a sold-out screening of Wicked for Good, I saw no less than 5 kids dressed in sparkly pink dresses and witches' hats, mimicking their favorite characters. Am I about to shit on a film that probably made them happy? Yes. Wicked for Good, hereafter referred to as Wicked 2, because it is a simpler and more Marvel-coded way to discuss the film, has not been received as positively as Wicked Part 1. And a lot of this stems from a pretty simple problem. Act 2 of the musical Wicked is pretty much universally understood to be worse than Act 1 in just about every conceivable way. And additionally, Broadway's Act 2 of Wicked is mercifully short compared to the 137-minute slog that is Wicked 2. And we gotta talk songs, because while the first Wicked had multiple certified bangers like No One Mourns the Wicked, Popular, and of course Defying Gravity, what does Wicked 2 have? For Good is okay, I think. And worse than that, Wicked 2 has also added 2 songs that were not present in the original musical, which has provoked, at best, half-hearted shrugs from Wicked diehards, and, at worst, the snores from their boyfriends who they dragged to the theater to go watch Wicked 2 with them. And I think that's a pretty fair trade, because listen, fellas, if you made your girlfriends watch the 5-5-1 Dallas Cowboys play football this last Thanksgiving, then you owe them not only a viewing of Wicked 2, you owe them a little bit more than that. You owe them a viewing of a true crime docuseries of their choosing, where we learn after 6 long, arduous episodes that despite the open incompetence of law enforcement, who killed the wife? Of course, it was the husband. It's always the husband. I'm making fun of true crime and Wicked. We'll see if I have an audience after this video. And look, in the spirit of full disclosure, despite the fact that I am in fact a homosexual, I'm a bad homosexual, because I never saw the original Wicked musical, which I think does give me a bit of a unique perspective. It also means that, unlike some of my friends, I was not crying in the theater, which is okay. Clearly, this movie meant a lot to certain people. The purpose of this video, though, is to offer an explanation as to why those of us without a prior emotional connection to the source material didn't really like the movie as much. And look, I get it. If you were to shit on something near and dear to my heart, like 2010's Fallout New Vegas, if you were to say it's a shitty, ugly-looking, antiquated video game, I would listen to your criticism because I'm not a sycophant, even if I don't necessarily agree.
A toaster is just a death ray with a smaller power supply.
But in my view, Wicked 2 falls flat because it is just fundamentally a worse film than Wicked 1 in just about every conceivable way. The songs aren't nearly as compelling, the plots are often borderline nonsensical, the emotional payoffs do not pay off, and the character arcs / relationships are all over the place. So today we'll be reviewing and breaking down Wicked for Good, and trying to answer the question why the most anticipated sequel of the year is not nearly as popular as its predecessor. And the boos for that pun, I suppose, are warranted. Why the long face, buddy? Oh, you know, the economy, society, my personal choices, all collapsing at once. So I'm coping the only way I know how, doom scrolling. Yeah, that's definitely helping. So what's today's ad read? You gonna fix the recession, magically solve my dating life, and what, save humanity? Absolutely not. But thanks to today's sponsor, TesterUp, I can help with at least one of your problems, your money situation. I don't have a money problem. You very obviously do. Anyways, TesterUp actually makes it easy to earn extra cash by testing apps and playing games. There are tons of apps out there that claim to pay, and half of them are quite confusing, but TesterUp cuts through all of that. They only list offers that actually pay out, and everything's tracked in one place. Okay, but is it complicated to sign up? No, you absolute clown. Stop doom scrolling, it's melting your brain, and sign up for TesterUp instead. You just enter your email and phone number, follow the steps, and start getting paid for testing out apps or playing games that you'd probably be wasting time on anyway. That sounds kind of perfect for me. Smart man. So if you want to start earning today, scan the QR code up there or go to the link down below in the description. Again, that's the QR code right up there or the link down below in the description. Go on and do it before you start doom scrolling again. Thanks to TesterUp for sponsoring today's video, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming. But most importantly, Heart, back by popular demand. I'm going to start with a brief contrast between this film and Wicked Part 1, which admittedly, I was bullied into liking by the man I was dating at the time. Come on, Patrick, wasn't Defying Gravity so moving? Yeah, sure, fine, whatever. Okay, now granted, I was watching Wicked Part 1 on an illegal Chinese streaming website with Mandarin subtitles in the bottom third that I literally could not turn off. But Defying Gravity is a great song, great movie moment, I'm secure enough to admit that. But while the first Wicked not only had solid tracks, it was also a film that just structurally worked a lot better. I think for most people, you do get a fair amount of buy-in for the friendship between Elphaba and Galinda when they were getting their education in the first film at Shiz University. And yeah, just about every named element in this story is fourth wall breaking levels of silly, but we're just going to have to move past that. In a few minutes, we'll be talking about the Governor of Munchkinland, which is a title that is so insulting, but also at the same time a little bit more dignified than being the Vice President of the United States.
Our partnership as your Vice President! Yeah, right.
Have I won over any of you skeptics with that Hamilton reference? I won't mention that that's probably the only real song I know from that musical, and I think it's pretty overrated in general. Wicked 2 features largely the same cast as the first one, so if you enjoyed Ariana Grande pretending to be a good actress, there's more of that here. That clip's gonna age poorly when she wins Best Actress for this movie. But, you know, literally last year, the Oscars gave an award to Zoe Saldana, who was in the widely mocked Emilia Perez, and that was a movie, to give you a refresher, where she was prominently featured in a song called the Penis to Vagina song. So perhaps the value of an Oscar is basically worthless.
Adam's apple reduction.
Yes. The acting was not great, which we'll occasionally touch on throughout this video, but the larger problems really come down to the character arcs and the plots, being both worse than the first installment and just not good, even in a vacuum. And just as a reminder, after the events of Act 1, Glinda is now a good witch, fully working for the Wizard of Oz, and Fiyero, her love interest, is the captain of the Gale Force, which is their military. And our first scene picks up well after Elphaba has been exiled from Oz, and Oz, in the meantime, has decided to fully invest in the whole animal cruelty bit. And how does the film choose to depict it? Why, by having a bunch of oxen pulling carts to pave and place the yellow bricks for the yellow brick road. I guess this is slightly better than paving over Paradise to put up a parking lot, because I guess at least it's a road, but it's not much better. Elphaba then swoops in on her broomstick and disrupts the construction, which from a public policy perspective would be considered eco-terrorism. But from the film's perspective, I think it's meant to be somewhat inspiring. The only problem with this sequence is that humans have been using oxen for labor for about, I don't know, the last 6,000 years, give or take. And how is somebody watching this movie meant to take the actions of the Kingdom of Oz as being uniquely evil when human civilization has been doing the same thing for so long? And I don't know, but maybe it's because they feel the intended viewer is a child. Although then again, I think the vast majority of the time I've spent thinking about the Indus River Valley civilizations over the course of my lifetime, most of it was in the 5th grade.
We're the Mesopotamians.
That song is better than any of the 10 dreadful numbers I had to sit through while watching this film, save maybe the closing song, and that is just, you know, one of the film's major problems. It's a musical of bad songs, an oxymoron of mediocrity. There's a reason why most musicals opt to take place over one day with a 15-minute intermission rather than over 2 days with a 1-year-long intermission. It's very possible, even probable, that I'd be a lot more forgiving with how boring the first half, frankly 70% of this movie is, if I was still riding off the highs of the bombshell musical number Defying Gravity. But alas, Universal Studios decided to split the movie into 2 parts for financial reasons, which is actually something I understand because I am a professional YouTuber and most of us do the exact same thing. But I'd like to think that whether or not I'm discussing the first episode of Polyfamily or the second episode of Polyfamily, I'm still giving you the same amount of effort, homosexual energy, and slightly depressed sense of humor. Wicked Part 2 is just full of filler, because right after this we get a scene where they open the yellow brick road, officially. Because that's really what we need after a lengthy sequence of Elphaba interrupting a giant Ozian capital infrastructure project. We need another scene where they open said Ozian capital infrastructure project. The event is headlined by Madame Morrible, don't laugh at the name, played by Michelle Yeoh. And look, I love Michelle Yeoh. I'm so happy she got like $1 million for this movie. She looks absolutely stunning. She is completely miscast. There's not a single scene where she strikes the right balance of portraying this character who is a Machiavellian evil operator being the press secretary for the Wizard of Oz.
No way! I'm obsessulated. The wand really sells it.
She comes across as someone who's kind of bored to be there, rather than this villain who's relishing in their job of being evil and murdering people for the good of the realm. And this next thing, this is not exclusive to Michelle Yeoh, nor is this me judging anybody, but seeing photos of some of the stars of this movie on the red carpet compared to seeing them on the film has me, frankly, very concerned for their health and well-being. I can't think of a single movie in the history of cinema that would actually be worth mainlining this much Ozempic for, besides, well, I can think of one example, the original Star Wars film. And that's admittedly a very rare example, but with just how the story is structured, if Luke Skywalker isn't a big enough twink, you know, the whole thing falls apart.
You think a princess and a guy like me? No.
Young lust, let's... When we drive in your car, I'm your baby, losing all my innocence in the backseat. And yes, that was a homosexual ship fan cam between Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, two characters who are so canonically straight that it hurts. Speaking of, and it's best to get ahead of this now, Wicked is not queer media. There is literally a sex scene between Elphaba and a man who later turns into a scarecrow, and guess what? She still chooses, after that happens, to get with the homeless scarecrow rather than picking Ariana Grande, who is a literal princess with a beautiful mansion and beautiful dresses. She picks homeless scarecrow over that. We'll talk more about that later, but right now we're at one of the two made-for-the-screen original songs, No Place Like Home, where Elphaba is telling all the animals who are fleeing Oz that they should, you know, stay in Oz and fight, because there's no place like home. The animals then ask her if she has, you know, any particular plan to fight the humans, and she's basically like, oh, it's so swell to be in your home. And then all the animals basically tell her to go pound sand and flee Oz, so that they're not, you know, enslaved by Oz. And I think it's here we should talk about the first of many, let's just call them silly plot moments in Wicked. Elphaba not having a really well-developed plan to fight back against Oz besides living in her treehouse and writing messages in the sky that no one will read. I can excuse that. I can overlook that. But she's literally being asked by a 10-foot-tall bear, multiple leopards, and a lion, oh boy, however are we gonna fight against the humans? I don't know. How about you use your fucking talons? How about you use your fucking claws? How about you try using your mouths and your bites, which have over 1,000 pounds of pressure per square inch? You're telling me you're so fixated on this concept of, we need a plan, I don't know, how about you plan to start eating the gayest fighting force ever assembled on the big screen? The Oz military looks like a bunch of homosexual nutcrackers that came to life, and you know, I'm pretty sure because it's only rated PG, they're not even allowed to fire those guns. So, happy hunting. And look, this line of criticism may bother you because it's, at the risk of making myself look bad, cinema sins adjacent. Nitpicks surrounding one's own sense of realism at the expense of suspending your sense of disbelief and looking at the bigger picture. But the problem with this is that it seems like every other plot beat causes these questions to come to the surface, being either poorly justified or poorly executed, or both. There'll be some other great examples as we talk about the plot more. The next scene somewhat demonstrates my point though, because we get Nessa, Elphaba's sister, casting a love spell on her lover Bach, except, you know, it's unrequited. He's not really her lover. And she tries to cast a spell on him, despite not really knowing how to do magic. The spell doesn't work, and it's going to literally remove Bach's heart, thus killing him. So the only way to save his life is for Elphaba to cast a little spell and turn him into a robot. And instead of being grateful that he's, I don't know, alive, Bach develops this whole complex around being turned into a machine. And that's how we get the Tin Man, which is kind of neat. Again, I had not seen the musical prior to watching this, and I was pointing at the screen, Leonardo DiCaprio style, when I realized, oh my god, that's the Tin Man! I remember him from the much better movie.
I'll admit I stopped resisting when she stroked my cock like a piston.
Things take a bad turn after this. though. Even worse than the porn parody.
I fucked a witch. I need a new bitch that would love my metal frame.
Because now Glinda is trying to convince Elphaba to rejoin the Wizard of Oz and work together. And oh my god, what happened to Jeff Goldblum? He's completely out to lunch in every single scene. Can somebody go back in time and tell him he's actually supposed to be acting and not recording another Apartments.com commercial?
Yay! Yay! Apartments.com. Ooh.
He's also expected, unfortunately, to sing, which goes about as well as you'd expect.
Even more.
I'd say his performance is a bit of a cross between talk singing and me being drunk at karaoke night, which is to say, in either event, deeply unpleasant. Editing pad here. This lime Celsius is garbage. It's 6 in the morning. And I apologize because I actually did some singing in this video. Jeff Goldblum, maybe I judged you too harshly, except in his case, he's making millions of dollars, and I'm just having to cover Addison Rae for the Luke Skywalker fan cam so YouTube lets me actually earn money this month. Okay, back to the video. Glinda also joins the wizard in this musical number, which is a change from the original stage musical, but even Ariana Grande attempting to bail him out and make the song somewhat salvageable works about as well as putting a band-aid on a severed limb.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off.
But it's here we get another silly plot moment in Wicked. Because Elphaba reaches terms with the Wizard of Oz, she'll rejoin them on the condition that she can free the flying monkeys, which she does on the spot, and that they'll start treating the animals humanely. And in case you forgot, since the musical's smoke break intermission lasted a year, at the end of the first film it was like a whole thing that the Wizard of Oz was passing these very draconian anti-animal laws, severely curtailing their rights, despite the fact that they're sentient beings. Although, I guess in our world they're also sentient beings, they just can't talk. So we've decided it's okay to eat them. This is actually another change from the original musical because the plotline of the sort of animal cruelty is a little bit discarded in the musical from what I've read, whereas here in the cinematic adaptation, it is very front and center. This is a good change, albeit poorly executed, because right after this, the next plot beat is Elphaba opening a door and seeing that the wizard has a jail full of animals. And then she immediately decides, fuck this, fuck the wizard, I'm gonna fuck Prince Fiyero later. Fuck the deal I just agreed to, I'm gonna fight the wizard now. Breaking news, the man responsible for signing the Enslave All Animals law has an animal jail. How shocking. But like, why is she surprised? Either Elphaba believes in her institutional capacity to change Oz from the inside, which she did literally 30 seconds ago, or she doesn't. And this existence of the animal prison is hardly shocking to the viewer, when in both films we have evidence that Oz has mistreated animals. Again, I know it's been a year, but literally seeing evidence of Oz's plans to capture animals and deprive them of their ability to talk was a major plot point from Wicked 1, and is actually what causes her to flee the Emerald City initially. Elphaba's discovery of this animal jail, oh, Oz mistreats animals, how shocking, and her subsequent rage are, in my opinion, a very weak catalyst for an abrupt change in a character's actions. And when one of your most major plot beats is not executed well, or to be charitable, is flimsy, your film will suffer. And it does. It'll suffer like the animals in those cages. It's just such a weak moment for a movie where my suspension of disbelief is already stretched so thin. Like, I'm supposed to believe the simpletons of Oz are just so enamored whenever Glinda's floating by on a bubble. They're like, oh, that's our witch, I feel good about myself. Really? Read a book. Then again, those AI videos of Charlie Kirk singing get millions of views, so maybe the average person is just entertained by slop. Elphaba then frees the animals from the jail, who then go on to break up and interrupt the wedding between Fiyero and Glinda. And you'll notice I didn't even mention their engagement because it's just very obvious from minute 5 that they're not getting married.
Don't just stand there and not getting married, and don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today.
Much better song about marriage from arguably a much better show. It's really night and day compared to Couldn't Be Happier. But one credit I will give this film is Jonathan Bailey's body language to Ariana Grande is just perfect. You could just tell from his face that that relationship is doomed. That all being said, I will often deduct points from a film if I can just clearly tell what's going to happen next, because I'm notoriously terrible at predicting movie plots and what's going to happen. It's just not in my wheelhouse. For example, I didn't realize Rebecca was gay until Mandalay was literally on fire. Or maybe it was the scene where Mrs. Danvers was just like smelling all her clothes. Anyways, speaking of a much better film that actually does depict queerness, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Alpha Glinda, or Glinphaba. Those sound like either venereal diseases or the new medications created to combat them. A lot has been said about the queer subtext in both the staged production and the films, and I gotta say, I do not see it. Immediately after Elphaba uses freed animals to disrupt Glinda's marriage to a man, gay points there, she goes off and goes into the forest to have sex with that same man, gay points revoked. Stating to the camera that she's ready to be a little wicked, or something to that effect, which prompted a groan in my mind, she immediately goes off and has awesome heterosexual treehouse sex with Prince Fiyero. Guys, I'm pretty sure they're just friends. Frankly, the odd codependency between Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande on the press tours for Wicked are infinitely more queer in their subtext than anything that was depicted on screen in Wicked for Good. Why is she holding her finger like that? You know what? I'm giving that moment an honorary, silly plot moment in Wicked, despite not even actually taking place during the movie. And look, fundamentally, Wicked is about this friendship. It's about this friendship between Elphaba and Glinda. And in retrospect, were they ever even really friends? Glinda more or less immediately acquiesces to an emerald-tinted fascist regime that's prosecuting Elphaba, and Elphaba steals Glinda's fiancé at their wedding. Are you technically a fiance at the wedding? That's a good point. I feel like there should be an in-between term for that actual day. Like, do you go from fiance to husband, like, right there? That's kind of crazy to me. My actual point is that the relationship, friendship building between Elphaba and Glinda, most of that's taken place during Wicked Part 1. In Wicked Part 2, they're really not on screen together for that many significant moments. It's kind of left to the audience to fill in the gaps. Anyways, now it's time for an actual silly plot moment in Wicked, and this one really ruined the movie for me, if I'm being honest. Madame Morrible uses magic to summon a tornado, which then subsequently kills Elphaba's sister Nessa with a giant falling house. The same house from The Wizard of Oz. What a coincidence. They're trying to use Elphaba's sister, who is now smushed, as bait, essentially, and Glinda goes along with this plan, stalling with Elphaba until the friends of Dorothy can arrive and attempt to arrest and capture the Wicked Witch of the West. Another example of their truly inspiring friendship. And look, I'm not even going to talk about how moronic it is for Elphaba to suddenly develop this avid fixation to get her dead sister's shoes, with such a tenacity that would make even the most ardent foot fetishist blush with the same shade of red as the ruby red slippers. That's not the issue here. Oh, those shoes are all I have left of my sister, and that Dorothy girl needs to give them to me. I find that very hard to believe, and very convenient for the plot. But that's not the issue. That's not the main issue. Here is the big problem, because what happens after this, after Elphaba gets kind of captured, is that Fiyero shows up with flying monkeys to rescue her, and they give her back her flying broomstick, which had been confiscated by the sex toy soldiers. How many gay puns can I make about this army? I've probably got one more in me.
Phrasing?
So to set the scene, to make sure we're all clear about what has happened, Elphaba is now free, she's not being held by the guards, she's got a flying broomstick, there's about a dozen flying monkeys, and Fiyero is there with a gun. One would think, okay, logically, they're going to escape, and they're going to probably go have sex again in the treehouse. No. That's not what happens. Fiyero tells Elphaba, leave, go now, and then he also tells all of the flying monkeys, every last one, go, fly with her, protect her, which leaves him alone with, you know, a bunch of the fruity foot soldiers, where he then gets captured, essentially voluntarily, where he's then canonically tortured until he dies and becomes a different species. Fucking what? I mean, maybe this was handled in the musical, but this is completely ridiculous. I don't think this is pedantic to point out, because this moment is kind of the emotional linchpin and catalyst for all of Act 3 and Elphaba's musical number, where she apparently becomes evil with the song No Good Deed Goes Unpunished. Fuck, just what? You escaped on a broomstick. Was there not room for two people? No? Okay, fine. How about having him get picked up and live gifted by one of the flying monkeys. They're capable of kidnapping leopards and grizzly bears. I think they can handle him and take him to the treehouse. Fiyero also just tells the flying monkeys to go off and fly with Elphaba to protect her. Why? Literally, why? He was the leader of the Gale Force. He should know, better than anyone, frankly, that Oz has no air support because the monkeys are free now! What does she need to be protected from? Also, okay, set all of that aside. You're pointing a gun at the good witch. You can't say, hey, one of you soldiers, go grab me a horse because I'm gonna be leaving. This is lunacy. This moment renders the entire rest of the movie for me as some sort of broken timeline that never should have happened. And if you're gonna tell me that this has to happen for the sake of the narrative, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. Do it in a way that makes sense. Make Elphaba's escape actually have a sense of urgency. Make Fiyero genuinely need to make the sacrifice in a way that's not stupid, rather than him just standing there with his mouth agape, and then you have the audacity to look at me, the viewer, and talk to me like I'm the moron. Anyway, after that, Fiyero becomes the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. Isn't that fun? Yay! Alright, we are in the home stretch now. Everyone wants Elphaba dead, so she just decides, alright, I'm gonna give the people what they want. She has imprisoned Dorothy off screen and is keeping her in the dungeon of her castle, and Elphaba fills up a bucket full of water and just leaves it there, fully intending, knowing what Dorothy is going to later do, which, you know, that ties up neatly a 100-year-old plot hole. Why would the Wicked Witch keep a bucket of literally the only thing that kills her out in the open? Oh, she was depressed, she was troubled, she was sad. Ah, that makes sense. Glinda and Elphaba share a moment, reaffirm their friendship with For Good, and Glinda can only watch as Elphaba is murked by a bucket of water held by Dorothy. What, does Dorothy have a last name? Comment down below if she does. If I had to guess, it would be something like Dorothy Gale or Dorothy Storm. It'd be something kinda gay like that. She is an ally, despite what she did in this film. In her grief, Glinda confronts the Wizard of Oz, who is actually Elphaba's true father, and she forces him into exile and also arrests Madame Morrible, which, in a sense, she's kind of performed a bloodless coup to make herself the sole leader of Oz. You think Wicked is a touching story about friendship, and I think it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of not putting leaders who've committed war crimes through proper tribunals to convict them of their crimes before the public eye. We are not the same. But shocker, Elphaba's not actually dead, she faked her own death. Yet she still decides to flee Oz entirely with her new scarecrowified lover. And before the credits could even finish rolling, we were already being treated to headlines about how sequels for Wicked were already in development, which, if you ask me, is a true storybook Hollywood ending. Look, are some of the things I've criticized Wicked 2 for pedantic? Probably. And is it really fair to judge a film so heavily in the shadow of its predecessor? Yes. Because this is a sequel, okay? And to be honest with you, I'm giving this film a lot of benefit of the doubt in certain areas, particularly when it comes to the relationship, the friendship, okay, don't get it twisted, between Elphaba and Glinda, which was rather flat throughout the duration of the runtime. They don't share a lot of meaningful time together on screen progressing their friendship. I'm only somewhat invested in how their story wraps up because I saw the first film. Therein lies the problem. I'm only somewhat invested in how their story goes because, to be honest with you, this whole process left a sour taste in my mouth. The character arcs were unsatisfying. Elphaba was bad. Now she's good.
We were bad, but now we're good. Moving into your neighborhood.
Glinda was vapid and obsessed with popularity. But now she's good, and she's besties with Elphaba, and she always was. And the whole plotline with Bach was just never really resolved when you think about it. And on that note, I do still have one very big outstanding question. Mr. Fiyero turned Scarecrow, do the carpets match the drapes? I'm just asking. I should probably go out on that sex joke, but Wicked for Good was not received as well because it is a weaker film about a weaker part of a musical that is, you know, polarizing to some people.
For neglecting to include Dorothy or Toto in a Wizard of Oz movie, I would have to give it 0 bags of popcorn.
You can still enjoy it and like it, despite its flaws and inconsistencies. I can't stop you. I'm not your boss. But I'll leave you with one final note. As I was walking out of the theater, I saw a very young boy who must have been probably about 8 complaining about the ending to his sister, his uninterested older sister who was wearing a pink dress. And at the end of the day, you can be one of two people. You can be the incisive but cynical 8-year-old boy wearing the New York Giants shirt, or you can be the aloof but defensive 9-year-old girl wearing a pink dress. The latter option is more easily pleased. For better, for worse, and for good. Yeah, I take your booze. Yeah, one more bad pun, buzzer beater. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Those are all free ways, and they do genuinely help me out, and they help the channel out. Comment down below if you've seen either of the 2 Wicked movies, what you think. I'm sure I will be sorting through negative comments about people who said it's fine and I'm overly critical. But as always, my name is Patrick, and my friends call me Pat, and I'll see you for the next one.